Hi everyone, welcome. I see that you are all getting let in right now. We'll hold on a few seconds while our platform lets everyone in. In the meantime, while you are coming in, you're welcome to use the chat box to say hello. Let us know where you're tuning in from today, and we'll get started in just a minute. Perfect. Welcome everyone. I see our numbers are growing. So thank you for joining us. We're going to give it just a minute while our platform lets everyone in. You can say hello from where you are tuning in from today. Wonderful, wonderful. I'm seeing lots of names in the chat. Perfect. Well, hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today, and welcome to today's webinar, Preventing and Healing from Child Abuse and Neglect. My name is Jackie Zimmerman. I'm the Public Education Associate at Mental Health America's National Office, and I'll be moderating today's webinar. Just a few notes for you all before I introduce our presenter. This webinar is being recorded and will be emailed out to all of our registrants within 1 week. We do not currently offer CEUs, but if you would like a certificate of attendance, we'll have a form for you to request one. I'll post that link in the chat here shortly, and it'll also be included in the follow-up email. We've also built in some time for Q&A at the end, so please post your questions in the chat box throughout the presentation, and we'll go through some at the end. Feel free to make comments or share any of your knowledge in the chat as well. We also would like to make a content warning for today. This webinar will contain information about child abuse, neglect, sexual abuse, and other topics that you might find distressing. We just encourage you to take care of your mental health and disengage if needed. Our speaker today is Lori Poland. Lori is a childhood survivor of a high-profile child abuse case and has since devoted her life and career to ending child abuse and neglect, as well as healing its cycles and ripple effects. She spent her career working in mental health and the nonprofit sector as a therapist for children and families. Lori transitioned from therapy to assume the job of executive director for EndCan, leveraging her background in business management and program development. Lori currently serves as EndCan CEO and travels nationally as a motivational speaker, talking about possibilities after trauma, becoming a transcender, and the ripple effects of trauma on children and families. Lori's book, I Live Here, details her experience as a child abuse survivor and will be released in July 2022. Additionally, Lori has consulted with the legal system to advocate for change in the field and develop a greater understanding. You can learn more about Lori and her book at loripoland.com, which I'll also put in the chat for you all. And now I am so pleased to welcome today's presenter, Lori Poland.
Thank you so much. How fun was that to see the chat and to see people from New Jersey to Hawaii, New York, middle of the country, Denver, Colorado, that's where I'm at. It is so neat. And I honestly don't know that a couple of years ago I would have ever believed that these kinds of things would have happened. I understood like having meetings virtually and stuff, but nothing like sharing information and connecting for the greater good, and having webinars and information sharing opportunities like this. And I am truly so honored. Like, I'm really humbled, and I honestly even a little nervous because I can't see any of your faces, but it is really a pleasure to have so many people from all over joining today. I hope that you can walk away with a lot of learning lessons and feeling a part of a community, and hopefully a lot of joy and possibility after talking about a pretty hard topic that culturally we don't have a whole lot of comfort quite yet talking more openly about. So that's why I'm here, and that's what makes my job worthwhile and really, really exciting. So as shared earlier, I first want to thank Mental Health America for giving me this platform and for inviting me to be a part of their amazing network and truly helping to understand the bridge between child abuse and neglect and our mental health wellness. and the impact that our histories can have on our mental well-being. And what we get to do with that and heal. Ideally, that's the goal for all of us. So it's my pleasure. And I know that some of this topic may be hard, and I just invite you to love on yourself and love on your needs should you have any experiences that come up during this conversation. Also, feel free to use the chat as an open opportunity to talk about your experiences and needs. And hopefully at the end, I'll leave plenty of time for us to make space for you, because that is what matters most to me. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to give you a full-blown disclosure that technology and I aren't typically the best of friends, but I had some really great help today to make sure that ideally this is going to be as smooth as possible. I have two screens, which is also a newer thing for me. And I'm going to flip to my next screen on my other screen while trying to just continue to have eye contact with you all. So if I fumble, just bear with me. All right. So for me, I believe in starting new beginnings. Every day that I wake up, I genuinely look forward to the fact that first I'm awake. And second, I get that day to be my new beginning. It gets to be what I need to make of it. And that doesn't mean that every day I wake up in the best of spaces and that I'm ready to like go get the world. It really means that like today, I get to be here in this moment right now, and I'm not going to stop. And so I really am grateful for that ability to start a new beginning every day and continue going until my time has expired. I'm just honored about that. One thing I want to start with is just educating us a little bit about child abuse and neglect. So in 2018, the National Foundation on Child Abuse and Neglect, which is also known for NCAN, we did a study with Zagby. And
I'm going to have you pause for 1 second. It looks like on our end, part of your screen is blocked off at the top.
That's because that's that little strip thingy. Okay. Now it's blocked off over there. How do I hide that thing? Let's see. Oh, I'll put it over here. Does that work?
There's still in the upper left-hand corner, just a part that is blocked off. And if you want to try to end your sharing and reshare your screen, you can do that too, if that works.
Okay. Yeah, no problem.
Thank you everyone for your patience.
I'm sorry. See, I told you. I already started. All right, here we go. Let's try this one more time. Okay. Oh, wait. When I shared, did I share my audio?
You are good. Just go up to your display settings and switch it to our view.
Thank you. Can you see?
Hit that one more time.
One more time. Okay. All right. How about now?
We are still seeing your next slide. If you want to.
You're still seeing my next slide. Okay. I'm gonna be brave and take off my second screen, and hopefully that will help us here. I'm so sorry. Golly. Okay. Now I'm gonna do display.
And then just swap presenter view. Yep.
Oh, give me that option. I am so sorry. All right, we're gonna try this one more time. Okay, how's that?
Awesome. Oh, now we are.
We're back?
Fingers crossed? Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Perfect.
Golly. Okay. All right. I'm so sorry. Thank you. Okay. It went black. What happened? Here we go. Oh, it's so fun. Okay. I don't know what's happening here. All right. Can you see my screen okay there, Jackie?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you again for your patience with me. All right, so I'm gonna hustle back in here and keep going. It looks like my screen keeps going black if I stop moving my cursor. So, but 4 years ago, we did a study with Zogby Analytics, and we asked them to help us gain a greater understanding from a public health lens to see if the general population saw child abuse and neglect as a concern, like as a public health concern. And fortunately, what we were able to learn was that yes, the general public saw child abuse and neglect as the fourth major public health issue. At 42% of the population saw it as an issue. And that is both a good thing and maybe not as much of a good thing, right? The good thing is that we're aware of it. Probably the negative thing is that it's even on this list, right? We have to do something about it. But the great thing is that just in the last, I would say 5 to 10 years, more and more people are talking about their own experiences or even the impact that they've had by having direct contact with topics around child abuse and neglect. And I think just that conversation having is creating a whole shift for all of us to do something different. And for me, that's why I'm here. That's what my honor is. And I am just so grateful for that. Jackie, my screen is coming in and out. Can you tell me one more time if you're able to see it consistently, or is it coming in and out on your end as well?
Right now we can see it, but it will flash in and out occasionally.
Yeah, I'm not sure why that is happening. Okay, it's making me even more nervous. So I'm just being very candid with you all.
Yes, we can see it for the most part. Every once in a while it goes in and out, but we will just listen to your wonderful voice.
Thank you. Okay, all right. You know, I have a perfectionistic tendency, and so it's really being a little poked right now. So hopefully I can make this fun and engaging for all of you. So this slide to me is one of the most disheartening slides of the entire presentation, because this slide shows some numbers. And unfortunately, these numbers are just a small snapshot of the actual numbers that are out there, because the field of child abuse and neglect has been so underaddressed and underfunded that there are not accurate numbers and data that truly can show us what the impact is and how many people it actually has affected. And a lot of that is just accessibility, stigmatization, the way that our systems have been designed to provide assistance, but really lack those extra resources that are needed and necessary to help the entire population as a whole. So one thing that has been unfortunate for me to say is that approximately 1,800 children die on an annual basis from child abuse and neglect. That number has been about the same, give or take about 50 every year since the 60s. And to me, that's a problem. To me, that is a significant issue that needs to be addressed. Also, there's approximately 656,000 child abuse cases that are just substantiated. That's not the number of child abuse reports that are actually made to the child welfare system, and the millions of people that do not ever call in a report to be made through the child welfare system. And so this number is solely the opened cases by our child welfare system on a national basis, 656,000. Again, that number has also been pretty much the same, give or take about 10,000 since the 1960s. The other issue with it, and this number has changed drastically, is that over the course of a lifetime, for that 656,000 number, over the course of a lifetime, it costs our economy $2 trillion to address and support just this 1 year, 2019's year of open substantiated cases. And that number has gone up significantly, because what we've also learned over the last probably 25 years, specifically since 1996 and the study by the CDC and Kaiser Permanente, is that the long-term impacts of early childhood abuse are so significant and so much greater to our mental health, to our physical health, to our community, and that impact changes our trajectory forever. And the needs are greater and greater and greater. So this is something that we absolutely have to attend to and we have to address. So just to emphasize a little bit more on what I was talking about the 1996 study that was done by Kaiser Permanente and the CDC, is there were 17,000 adults who were interviewed in 1996. And essentially what they were able to identify was that the adults who had more than 4 adverse childhood experiences, and there's a total of 10 of those, but the adults that had more than 4 of those had greater lasting other issues than the people that had less than 4. And so those adverse childhood experiences can range from witnessing domestic violence, experiencing physical abuse, sexual abuse, witnessing or being around substance abuse, incarceration, divorce, poverty, those kinds of things. And so one thing that we recognize and really understand is that when a child under the age of 18 goes through anything significantly traumatic, that changes the chemistry of the brain. And it changes the chemistry of the brain, creating the brain to need to adapt. Because the most beautiful thing about our bodies that I love is the ability for them to first survive. We need to survive, and we find any way we can to survive in our environments, and we adapt. And that adaptation can create a needed sensation to self-preserve. So unfortunately, when we're borrowing energy from our body to take care of staying alive, our body doesn't have that same energy that it would normally have to manage our immune systems, to pay attention, to create a secure sense of self, to create confidence, to create a sense of security for the environments that are around us. Instead, the body is frantically trying to keep us in that state of trying to survive and defend and protect and ultimately just stay alive. And what happens when we have that experience, especially when we have that experience a number of times or over the course of a long period of time, we are more inclined to have things like psychiatric disorders, struggles with our employment, struggles with our body, mental illness, the likelihood of us getting involved in the criminal system, having a difficult time maintaining stable employment or stable lifestyle, interrelational problems. All of these different kinds of things can happen later in life because of what happened to us in our childhood. And to me, that means, okay, I need to do something for the children of our world so that they don't have to fight this uphill battle in order to heal and find hope and possibility, because that journey can be awfully hard. And what we also recognize is that when children are provided with supportive and responsive relationships, and that does not have to be from our primary caregivers, it can truly be from the people around us, our neighbors, our teachers, our coaches, our friends as parents. It can be anybody providing that loving, nurturing, and healthy relationship. What that does for us is it reduces our stress automatically. If you smile at a child, the likelihood of them reducing their internal stress and smiling back goes up. To me, that's just magical. That's why I love babies. I have a slight obsession with babies because they are just so profound and they have this ability to change trajectory so quickly. And it just gives me so much hope. But if we have those nurturing and healthy relationships, our stress levels go down. And then we have the ability to strengthen our core life skills. And those core life skills allow us to feel secure, confident, capable, able. We can provide for ourselves and for others. So healthy relationships lead to healthy adulthood. And when we don't have that, it does not mean that we don't have healthy adulthood. It just means for a lot of people who didn't get that very much as children, and I am certainly one of them, we have to find another way. So to me, it's like, okay, got it. Now that I know it might not happen this direction, there's still hope and possibility for me to find it another way. So we do that. We do whatever it takes. And I just love that. So I'm just going to shift gears a little bit and tell you about my story, because a lot of people are like, who is this woman and why and how does she have the opportunity to say these things? Does she even know? And for me, I do know. I am, though, one of tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of people who have experienced traumatic childhood and traumatic interactions in relationships in my aging or my my primitive years of growing and developing. So my story began, I grew up in a really small town community here in Colorado. We lived in a town where it was predominantly lower income, significantly lower income, poverty-based, a poverty-based community. In our little neighborhood, I lived on what was like a horseshoe. And the owner of my dad's work owned all the houses that we lived in. And he was a very generous and good man. And my dad's work was directly across the street from our home. And so my dad walked to work every day, and everybody on our street worked there, and we knew everybody and they knew us. And it was like our own little family, right? And so on August 22nd of 1983, I was just a 3-year-old little girl. I was not even 37 months old. And I was playing in my front yard with my brother. My dad took the day off of work. He had concert tickets that night with my mom. It was his birthday, and he was going to stay home and paint our house and then take my mom to the show that evening. So my mom came home for lunch, and we had just a wonderful birthday lunch for my dad. And the minute she left, my brother and I batted our eyes and begged our dad to get us another popsicle, which he did. And so while he was inside getting us another one, I was down near the street at our house, and my brother was up on the front porch. And right then, right in 12:35 in the afternoon, a car just kind of came around our corner. We lived on the corner of the horseshoe, and came around the corner, and the passenger door was open. And the man inside asked me if I liked candy. And like any sugar loving 3-year-old, I was like, yes. And we quickly negotiated. And in that negotiation, I was told to leave my pants there on the sidewalk, and he told me that he would give me candy if I went with him. So I just hopped in the car, and in a matter of just mere seconds, in the middle of daylight, with lots and lots of people around kind of watching and seeing what was going on, we were gone like that. And so moments later, my dad came outside and realized what had happened. And he hopped in the car and drove to the end of our street. And he didn't even know which direction to go. He didn't know to go straight, right, or left, because he had no idea where we went. So he came home, and he describes it as being the worst call he ever made. And that was to my mom at work, and to tell her that I had been taken. And then he called the local police department. And our police department consisted of maybe 4 or 5 people, kind of like the Andy Griffith group. The 911 operator was a man named Terry. It was his first day on the job. He was 19, and he got a call that a little girl had been abducted. And I'm positive, as he shared, that he didn't know what to do with that, aside from put it out on the radio, and everybody knew to look for this orange Datsun. But that was a disruption to our local community, our police force, my family, our friends, our extended family, and so on. And the ripple effect of that incident has still not stopped. So my abductor took me up to the mountains here in Colorado, about 20 minutes west of Denver. And he took an exit, which was a dirt road. And he drove into the woods and found an old abandoned outhouse restroom. And here in Colorado, I would imagine at various different sea levels and parts of the country that you're all in, it can be a little confusing, but an outhouse is essentially a restroom that's built using a hole in the ground, and chemicals are put in it to biodegrade the bile that people use and do that very rapidly. And this abandoned outhouse was pretty run down. It was made of stone and really not somewhere that people would typically stop. It wasn't on a main road or anything like that. And so my abuser then proceeded for I don't know how long to abuse me and do whatever he wished with me. And when he was done, he picked me up and placed me 15 feet below ground in the bottom of that toilet. And he left. And so the search for me here in Denver had begun hours before, and everybody was looking for me. And my family decided at that time it had really not been done very much to use the media to help search for me. And in doing so, the word spread, and it spread quickly and it spread rapidly. And everybody was paused and everybody was out looking for me. Everybody prayed, and I have goosebumps even just saying that. They prayed for me and my survival and my location and my safety. And so all of that was happening while I was alone, isolated and abandoned, starving to death. And 4 days later, bird watchers happened to be driving down the same dirt road up in the mountains. They were here from the East Coast, excuse me. They were looking for birds and the wife had to use the facilities, and they saw the restroom that I was in, and they both decided we'll keep driving because it was a pretty rundown, beat up place. And about a mile down the road, the wife said, I think we should turn around and go back to that last one. We really have to go. And like any good husband, the husband turned around and they were using the facilities, and they heard a faint cry, and they looked around, and eventually they looked down, and they saw me, and they said, "What are you doing here?" And I looked up at them with big blue eyes, and I said, "I live here." And to me, I just want to pause right there because I want to show and emphasize the power of children's ability to create a normal around any environment they're in. And that's exactly what I had done in that moment. I created a sense of normalcy. Being in that hole, I leaned in. Like, this is where I live. This is my new normal. And I think that that's both beautiful that children can do that we have that capacity. And it also breaks my heart, right? That we would lean into something so toxic and so sad and so disheartening. But it really speaks to our ability to survive. And so I was rescued. There were 2 volunteer firefighters that got the call, and the call on the CB radio back then in 1983 was "Kid in the Commode." And I just met these 2 rescuers within the last couple of months, and it's really a beautiful thing and such a gift for me. Not all survivors have this opportunity, but for me, I've been really rewarded with the opportunity to meet some people that played a really big role in my survival and in my healing journey and in my rescue. But I got to meet both of them, and they said that when they got on site, again, one of them was a 19-year-old volunteer, and he was like, "Kid in the Commode, what?" And then the other was an author, a writer who was also a survivor. And she had never told anybody about her child abuse. And they both got there, and they thought that I belonged to these bird watchers. And they said, "How did your child fall in the cesspit?" And the couple said, "We've never seen this child before in our lives. And so my primary goal was just to get me out. The hole was too small for an average sized person to get in. So they needed to find somebody small enough to come down and get me. And the man that did, I remember the moment he said, hold on. And I held on with everything in my being. And I was lifted out and I was given to one of the rescuers, this rider. And her and the 19-year-old were in the ambulance with me as we drove down the mountain, and they took me to the hospital where I was reunited with my family. And she said to me a couple of months ago when we met, she said, I said to you what I wish somebody would have said to me. And the police officers on scene had told them, we think this might be Lori Poland. We think this might be the little girl that's been missing for the last 4 days. Find out any and all details that you can. Who was it? What did he do? How long ago? You know, they were doing their job, right? Their job was to get information. And her job, she said, I said to you what I wanted somebody to say to me. And that was, you are okay. You are safe. You are loved. I've got you. And none of this was your fault. I don't remember her saying those things to me, but I can just truly say to you how grateful I am that she was a survivor and she got it. And she understood the impact that her experience had on her. And here she was, a 40-something-year-old woman, having an opportunity to provide that nurturing love that I really needed in that moment, not to get details and information out of me, but instead just to be there, just to show up for me. And I've never seen them again after that until just a couple of months ago. Both of them shared as they cried, as we cried together, as we reunited. And they both shared that moment, that day, changed their lives. And I just really find the power of our own experiences and how profound the impact of each one of us is on everything we come in contact with. And that every moment, from the moment I wake, the way I treat others, the way I interact with other people can change their day, can change their mood, can change their lives. So I get to choose. I have to choose. I choose to choose every day to be the light that I wish to see in the world. That's what so many people did for me. And I'm just so honored that I get to pay that forward on a daily basis. And so I was reunited with my family. My parents had their own trauma. They had their own significant impact. My brother, who was 5 years old at the time, also had his own significant impact. My grandmother had said to him that day, the day that I was taken, he was clinging to my mom's leg while the news cameras were there interviewing them. And my grandmother turned to my brother and said, Jeremy, how could you let your sister get in that car? And those words, that psychological impact on his well-being, have impacted him forever. He is a 40-something-year-old man. We don't have a very strong relationship because he's so angry. He's still so hurt. And in the 80s, there was no such thing as family therapy. There was no such thing as play therapy. It wasn't even called those things. Nobody really understood the impact of vicarious trauma and how, even though it wasn't direct trauma, like my brother wasn't the actual victim, he was the actual victim. He actually went through his own form of trauma, as did my parents, as did our whole community. And so now, thankfully, we live in a world where, we're talking about the mental health impacts of trauma on everyone and everything. And again, it's why I'm here. It's why I'm doing this work. And I'm honored and humbled and saddened. And I wish, right? But we can only do what we can. And but the power of that impact and the power of really loving and nurturing ourselves and our well-being can change the way we grow and the way we heal and how we interact. So I was in the hospital for 7 days after my abduction, healing, getting treatment, getting, fluids and trying to get better. And the day that I was released, I went straight from the hospital to the police department where I sat behind a two-way mirror, and a room full of 10 men came into the room and lined up, and they were asked to step forward and say, a sentence about getting in the car or something like that. And man number 4 was my abductor. And I was able to identify at 3 years old, sitting on my mom's lap, that's the bad man, mommy. That's the bad man that hurt me. And my mom got to hold me and protect me and nurture me in that moment. And they were able to videotape that, and they took that to a local agency that provided support and help for abuse victims. And that agency, they had asked them, is this reliable? And the director of that agency's name was Dr. Krugman, and he said, yeah, it's reliable. I don't think it's admissible, but it's certainly reliable. So Dr. Krugman and the psychiatrist at that center worked together with the prosecutor and the DA to do what was not called back then a forensic interview. It's now called a forensic interview. And I, over the course of 5 different sessions, played with the psychiatrist in a room who had an earbud in his ear. And Dr. Krugman got to be the videographer, because that's a great job for every pediatrician. And then the prosecutor and the defense attorney stood behind that two-way mirror, and they asked questions to the psychiatrist. And I played out my trauma on a number of incidences. I was able to identify in pictures, talk about hair color, the car, what we did, where we went, what happened. I did all of that. And they were able to use all of those videos, there were 5 different ones, to help get a plea bargain for my abductor, which happened, and he was sentenced, and all of that was it really prevented me from having to go through an additional trauma of sitting in the courtroom and looking across the room at my abuser and telling a whole room of strangers what had actually occurred in a more child-friendly way. That same doctor, Dr. Krugman, we lost contact after those few interactions. And when I was 17, I was a senior in high school doing a term paper for a technology class. And my paper, I don't know how or why, especially with technology, was about child abuse and how we could provide help to people in rural communities via technology, even though I'm still not very good at it. And so I went and asked Dr. Krugman if I could interview him. And we stayed friends after that. And when I went to graduate school, I didn't know anybody that had a college degree, let alone a graduate degree, and had a career. Most everybody in my world were people who, were more like the working class. That was my whole family, cousins, aunts, everybody. And so I had learned my freshman year of college to surround yourself with people you wanted to be like. And the only person that I knew who was super successful was Dr. Krugman. He was the dean of CU Med School, and I asked him to be my mentor. And so Dr. Krugman and I started meeting every month for breakfast or lunch, and just had these same conversations over and over again about how child abuse needed to be seen in the same way that so many other issues needed to be seen, like cancer and diabetes and heart disease and mental illness, and how it impacts all of it together. It's all one thing. And if we could talk about child abuse the same way we are more comfortable, we're still not there yet, but more comfortable with talking about these other things, well, maybe, just maybe, we could actually begin to end it and prevent it and do something really different with it. So in 2017, Dr. Krugman and I decided we were going to open the National Foundation to End Child Abuse and Neglect. And here we are. Fast forward, we are doing it. We have a team, we have a staff. We're all over the country doing walks, raising awareness, raising hundreds of millions of dollars to fund the field of child abuse and neglect, to partner with mental health, cancer, diabetes, suicide, all of the things that are intersected with child abuse, so that collectively we can all do something to be part of the change. So I'm doing this because I don't want anybody to hurt the way that I do and the way that I have. I also believe in healing and possibility. I know, as I said earlier, not everybody has the same journey that I do. My story is one of millions, and I know that. And I know that there are people my age who are still hurting. I know that the average age for a woman to share her story is 52. And I know that I will not stop until that changes. I also know that I can help people see that they can do something to be a part of the change. And I'm also doing this because I know that I can. And that's just simple. I know that I can. Every day, if I wake up and I can make an impact on one human, whether that's my children, my neighbors, my clients, my staff, my friends, any of you, sign me up. I will do it. And we have a video that I'd love to share with you. So I'm just going to push play and I hope that you can hear it.
The world is full of proud survivors. If you survived cancer, you're open about it. You donate, you advocate, you fundraise. For those who have overcome addiction, we help them celebrate the anniversary of their sobriety. But there's one instance where the survivors keep it quiet, where its effect touches anyone and everything around it, causing more pain. Where pride is replaced by shame. It's child abuse and neglect. For those who have suffered abuse, it's uncomfortable, it's embarrassing, and it's too rarely talked about. But these people are not victims. They are survivors. Once you embrace it, you realize you are not alone. We are all survivors. The parent who blames herself for not stopping it, the next-door neighbor who beats himself up for not noticing, the community that is impacted. They are also survivors. We are all survivors because we made it this far. So as survivors, let's not bury it. Let's embrace it. Let's go from hiding our shame to defying it. From standing in the shadow to stepping into the daylight. Because when it comes to child abuse and neglect, none of us are alone. None of us are at fault. We are all touched by it. We are all affected. We are all survivors. Our voices will end the silence. Your dollars will end the abuse.
So the goal for the National Foundation to End Child Abuse and Neglect is to have zero abuse in our lifetime. And I have several close members of my family who laugh and kind of balk at that. But I genuinely believe that it is possible because I was once a child. Every one of you was once a child. And every human I've ever met just wants to matter. Every single human deserves to matter. And I truly believe that if we can unite our voices and come together to provide support and healing and love, even if the children in our world are not our children, it takes one. For me, it was Dr. Krugman. I had all these years that I did not see him, but he was my North Star. I knew if I just keep going north, I could make it. And I did. Every day I woke up, I cried, I stumbled, I was angry, I threw temper tantrums because I'm a human and I have my own demons, and I get as much support for those when I'm aware of them as I possibly can. And I know that I can do this. I know that we can do this. And so I know that it's possible to have zero abuse in my lifetime. And I am going to really, really work towards that. One way. So what I do know is that when parents feel supported, they're less likely to abuse their kids. We also know that when we feel like, let me just start that sentence over. We know that when people feel like they matter, they're more inclined to experience joy. Who does not deserve to have joy? We also know that when people feel joy and love, they're drastically less likely to cause harm. We know that when children have safe, supportive, and nurturing environments, their chances of thriving go up. So, how do we improve our culture to be more supportive and engaged? At NCAN, we're doing that through research, through prevention, through education and training, and advocacy. And when I say advocacy, I don't just mean going on the Hill and marching and trying to change policy. That is certainly a big part of it. But advocacy means exactly what we're doing today, showing up, being a voice, being a part of a change. This is advocacy. So, how do we attend to us? We live in a world where all is accessible. Like I said at the very beginning, just the shock and the ability for us to do this, it's accessible. I would not have been able to connect with somebody in Hawaii today had it not been via Zoom. I love Hawaii. The fact that we're all together and we have access to one another is truly a gift, truly. We are on, moving, going all day and all night. So we really, truly need to attend to us, pausing and listening to what our bodies need, what our heart needs, what our minds need, what our community needs, what our friends and those closest to us needs, so that we can take those moments to be off and to let our body care for us, to hear our body, to hear what we need. We also drive the car at 9 RPMs every day. Eventually, we're going to wear it out. That is how I've learned how to survive. Everything I did was to try and get out of the environment that I was in, which was truly an environment of vicarious trauma, of residual pain. And all I wanted from about 8 until even still is to stay away from that environment. So I would busy myself. At 11, I started babysitting. By 11 and a half, I had business cards that I wrote all throughout my community and my neighborhood. And I worked a lot, and I still work a lot. And that's where my work needs to be. That's where I need to pause and slow and really recognize that I can ask for help and I need help, because running on 9 RPMs all day, every day is going to burn my engine. And I have to recognize that. So loving, attending, and nurturing ourselves will allow for the care that every human needs. If you see a neighbor who can't do it for themselves, be what you would need. If we spent 4 moments a day caring for ourselves and others, we'd shine just a little bit brighter. Just you showing up here today and doing this, being here, listening, staying on, writing comments in the chat. All of that is being caring and showing up and clocking in and being a part of the change, truly and ultimately attending to yourself. So thank you for doing that. Just want to thank all of you for this gift of listening to me. I can't see any of your faces, but I am so humbled, and I hope that you got something really valuable out of today. I would love to open it up for the next few minutes that we have. We have about 11 to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much, Lori. I know that we were all really moved by your story, your resilience, and your vulnerability with us today. And I just thank you. And if you look in the chat, there's so much support and love pouring in for you. But yes, now we will open up for questions. So if anyone has questions, please post them in the chat. I haven't seen any rolling in quite yet, but we have some time here. So, Lori's able to talk more about different things and the work that NCAN is doing as well.
Happy to.
We have a question here from Erica. How do we help? How do we support?
Yeah, so first of all, showing up today is being a part of the change, right? So that's step one. Secondly, if you'd like to join us and be a part of any of our walks. We have walks in 5 different locations across the country this fall. And those walks are really just awareness building, uniting our voices, and ultimately being louder than silence. You can find us at endcan.org, ENDCAN. I'm hoping that Mental Health America will be at every one of our walks as well. We have a lot of agencies and community members that will be there. We have it's like the exhibitor section, which is called the Together Pavilion. It's a free opportunity for anybody providing services to just share their information, because we know we can do this together. So that's a great way to get involved. We have volunteer opportunities. You can check all those out at our website.
Definitely. Thank you. I know there's a lot of questions about the video that you shared. I will get that link from Lori and make sure that that video is in the follow-up email that we send to you all. So you'll have access to that link as well as the slides, which do have her contact information and the information to her website where you can learn more about her story and EndCan as well. Another question for you, Lori, that came in, as a parent of someone who their child went through abuse, how do they work through forgiving themselves and processing through that?
Yeah, I would say the very first thing is that being that person, being the light, being available and attentive to your child is the best possible gift that you can give them. We as parents are imperfect, and that's the hardest part about parenting. Is I was the best parent in the world, and then I had kids, and once I had kids I was like, well, I don't know what I'm doing. And then we stumble all the time. And when our children get hurt, we as parents feel the liability and responsibility of that. And then the next thing that happens is oftentimes parents feel shame and guilt. And shame and guilt lead to disruption, irritability, upset, depression, anxiety, and all the other mental health struggles that can come with that. So I would ask and invite you to stay far away from the shame and guilt as you possibly can, recognizing and knowing that parenting is simply hard. And if we can first start there for all of our parents and being a support system, instead of getting upset or angry at ourselves or our community members for not being the best parent or doing it different than the way we would, showing up and recognizing, I got it. I've been there. I know what it's like to have a screaming child. I know what it's like to have a child in pain. I know what it's like to have a child that's hurting, that I can't do anything to have stopped that. So what I can do is love my child and show them and tell them exactly what Joanne showed and did for me, which is, you're not at fault. I've got you. You're safe now. Everything's going to be okay, because you inside, your light hasn't gone out. That light is still there. And that is the best gift we can first do for our children. And then, just like our mental well-being, finding the support and resources necessary at whatever it takes, whether that's a community group or a support group or a therapist or treatment, whatever that looks like. Let's get that. Let's be that. So.
Definitely. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Another point brought up in the chat is that sometimes the abuse is happening from parents themselves, or children are going through abuse in other ways. So maybe what are some of those signs of abuse that we can look out for? And then if you're noticing them, where to go?
Yeah. So I would say oftentimes the key signs are significant change in behavior. You can begin to see isolation, and they tend to pull away. There's more of a distrust. There's a shift in temperament or behavior, or even their mental well-being. We're even just seeing some of those signs. Even still, we are still inundated in our culture that talking about these things is not easy and not common. And so even still, where we can't always be that answer, but recognizing some of those changes and just saying to our children, I see these changes and I want you to know that I'm here. We don't even have to say that for our children. I'm going to pause right there and rewind. We can say that to our children, our friends, our partners, our family, anybody that we love and see or know in our community. Those are some of the signs that we can notice and say something, and ultimately being louder than silence and letting them know that we can be a safe resource for them. And then ideally connecting them and getting them the support that's necessary. So hopefully we can help their trajectory of healing as well.
Yeah, definitely. It looks like there are a lot of people that are wanting to get more involved, and they're really passionate and moved by this. And so, what are some things in their own communities that they can start to do, or those deeper things to really get that personal involvement in this cause?
Yeah, so I would say the most impactful thing that community can do is helping and showing up for children and families. And that can be not being the expert on how families should be raised or how each parent should raise their child, because every single parent is going to do it a little bit different for their own reasons. A, because they were not given a manual, B, because they didn't get a license for it, and C, because they have a whole history of themselves that they're bringing into that experience. But what we can be is in a non-judgmental, safe, secure place for children and families to show up. And we can do that through our community centers, our churches, our firefighters, our police forces, our schools. There's, I think, over 3,900 family resource centers across the country. Family resource centers are a great place to do that at. NCAN is working on doing some granting across the country to pilot some larger programs that specifically engage community involvement. And so we'll be everywhere, and you can absolutely get involved in those ways. And yeah,
Wonderful.
I see stuff on ACEs. ACEs is amazing. And Lindsay Lack is our communications director at MTCAN, and she's putting some information in the chat on resources and specifically on the adverse childhood experiences work and the impacts of those later in life too.
Yes, yes, the impacts of ACEs are great, and also the impact of those positive childhood experiences are equally as important, which is what I just love to hear you talking about, how the community and how individuals can support and really be that care for children, after they've gone through traumatic experiences like this. Um, I just thank you all. It has been such a great discussion in the chat, and we have had so many great questions coming in. And thank you, Lori, for answering all of those. We'll wrap up there. I just want to say again, thank you, Lori, for everything. We all were moved by your resilience and
Oh, thank you.
and the work that you and NCAN are doing every day. It is truly wonderful. And thank you to all of you who joined us today for your great comments and questions in the chat. I know that this can be a heavier topic, so just take care of yourselves today. Really spend some time doing self-care and looking out for you and your mental health. We appreciate all of you for joining us. We'll be in touch with everyone in the next few days with the follow-up materials. That'll include a recording to this webinar. It'll have the slides from today that also have Lori's contact information. It'll have a link for you to request your certificate of attendance. And then I'll also include that link to the video that Lori shared that so many of you really enjoyed. And so thank you, everyone. Thank you, Lori. Have a wonderful rest of your week.
Thank you.
Thank you all.